Hello! Today I'm going to be discussing the film What's Eating Gilbert Grape starring Johnny Depp and Leonardo DiCaprio. This film has been one of my favorites since I was pretty young, so I'm excited to get to talk about it today. So there's a lot that happens in this film, so I'll start by going over the main character and then talking about the different important aspects of the film. So to begin, Gilbert Grape is a young man living in the small town of Andorra. He has two sisters named Amy and Ellen and a brother named Arnie. And he also works at a local grocery store and is responsible for caring for his family and paying the bills. Gilbert's primary responsibility is to care for Arnie, who has autism spectrum disorder, because he can't be left alone. Gilbert must also take care of his mother, who is obese and can't leave her home, and he's also pretty much the main breadwinner of his family. His father died, and although his sister Ellen works at an ice cream shop, Gilbert carries most of the financial burden for his family. So the film generally focuses on Gilbert's daily life and the struggles he faces while trying to care for his loved ones. So one of the struggles that he faces is his affair. Shortly after the film begins, we learn of his affair with Betty, a married woman from his town. The relationship takes a toll on his emotions because he's worried about getting caught and because he feels a little bit guilty about allowing her to cheat on her husband. After he decided to end the relationship, Betty was pretty distraught, and her husband ended up drowning in the kid pool in their front yard after they had an argument. And so Betty decided to leave town, thus ending the affair for good and allowing Gilbert to move on. Which brings me to the next issue in Gilbert's life, which is his relationship with Becky. Becky and her grandmother were passing through town with their trailer when their truck broke down, and Gilbert was immediately interested in her, so the two developed a relationship pretty quickly. The problem is that they both know that Becky will be leaving as soon as her grandmother can fix the problem with the truck, so Gilbert worries throughout the film about losing her. In the end, she does leave, but she comes back every year to see them. And another issue that he faces throughout the film is his responsibility for his family. He works really, really hard and tries to provide the best life for his loved ones, but despite his efforts, he usually is the one that's blamed when things go wrong. And he has to carry this burden with him every day. Gilbert's mother's obesity is central to the plot of the film. Because she's very limited in what she can do, Gilbert must take responsibility not only for her, but for the entire family. She gets up from the couch a total of 2 times during the film, and the rest of the time, the family's actions pretty much revolved around her abilities. She's seen as the joke of the town, which offends Gilbert, who generally thinks pretty highly of his mother. In the end, his mother sadly passes away after bravely conquering the stairs in her house, showing that she truly did want to make a change for her family. And then, in order to avoid bringing a crane in to carry her body out of the house, Gilbert and his siblings decided to burn it down to preserve her dignity instead, but this pretty much means that they don't have a house now. And then we have Arnie. Arnie is Gilbert's best friend and worst enemy throughout the film. Despite the immense amount of love Gilbert has for his brother, Arnie tends to get into trouble. He climbs the town's water tower repeatedly, and even goes to jail for it temporarily. Gilbert must constantly be alert to where his brother is and what he's doing. And so taking care of his brother, working at his job, and managing the rest of his life and his family are difficult for him to balance all at the same time. So now I'll talk a little bit about Arnie. Arnie is 17 years old in the beginning of the film, and he has autism spectrum disorder. And initially, doctors told his family that he wouldn't live for very long, but he ended up beating the odds, and now the goal is to see him turn 18. That's what everyone in the family wants, is for him to see his 18th birthday party. Some of the stereotypes associated with autism that Arnie exhibits are that he's a burden and he's pitiable and childlike. He's a burden because he must constantly be watched, and his family finds it difficult to control his emotions and impulses. But he's also very childlike and helpless. He sometimes even gets special treatment from the people around town simply because they feel sorry for him and his family. And so now I'll talk about autism spectrum disorder in general. Global Autism Project defines autism as a pervasive neurodevelopmental condition which affects a person's ability to communicate and interact with others. Many people with autism have difficulty understanding social and emotional cues or behaviors, and about 1 in 68 people have autism spectrum disorder. And every case of autism is different. Another fact about autism is that many people associate autism with young children, simply because early detection and intervention is so prominent in our culture. But a child with autism will become an adult with autism. It doesn't just disappear with age. People also view symptoms differently based on differences in culture. For example, a common thing that many people with autism do is avoid eye contact. And in the US, eye contact is normal and expected in conversation, but in some places, avoiding eye contact is normal instead. So it wouldn't be viewed the same in each culture. And so some of the possible symptoms for somebody who has autism include difficulty in communicating with others, repetitive body movements, difficulty interpreting body language or movements, finding particular things interesting, and delayed development of social skills. And so how these symptoms could apply to Arnie, he actually fits some of the criteria. So he doesn't really understand a lot of emotional cues. For instance, when Gilbert gets mad at him for saying inappropriate things or throwing a tantrum, he continues despite Gilbert's angry expressions and attempts to stop him. He also flicks his nose and hits the back of his head with the palm of his hand when he's upset or confused. This is something that I noticed that he does throughout the film. It's kind of subtle, but he does flick his nose quite a bit. Usually it's whenever he's confused or upset. And then also, because of his difficulties understanding social cues, he needs constant supervision to avoid getting hurt or into trouble. He's also interested in particular things, like when the trailers drive through town each year, and also climbing up the water tower over and over again. He's easily distracted when he sees the water tower. But despite Arnie fitting these stereotypes, he's actually pretty good at communicating with people, which shows that he doesn't show every common symptom of autism. The following links provide information about autism in general. I found that they apply to the film and my interpretation of it. So the first link is from autismspeaks.org, and basically it's a page that lists 11 different myths and misconceptions about autism, which I think is really important for viewers to read, especially like before or after watching this film, just so that they can't make generalizations about autism related to Arnie. The second link is from globalautismproject.org, and it basically just gives a description of what autism is and what some of the symptoms are. The third link is from Autism Awareness Center, and this website talks about the 3 most common causes of early death in people with autism. And I found that this was really important to include because early on in the film they do say that he wasn't expected to live for very long, and I found myself wondering why he was expected to die so early. And so I thought it was important to do a little bit of research and just figure out, what would cause early death in people with autism. So that's why I included that link. The fourth link is a YouTube video from Emory University, and it basically shows the process of testing for early detection of autism in children, which is something that is done pretty often nowadays. And then the final link is for, it takes you to a page of research from 2009 that talks about the stereotypes associated with different types of autism, like Asperger's syndrome. And so now I'm going to talk about and rate Arnie's personality, community integration, and interpersonal relationships. So for personality, I rated Arnie at a 4. Arnie's personality is really well developed. While his autism plays a major role in how people see him, everyone around town knows about his personality. He's enthusiastic about the things that he likes and wants, and viewers know more about him than his disability. I also gave Arnie a 4 rating for community integration. Arnie is fully integrated in his community. He's from a really small town, and everyone knows him. And he goes with Gilbert to work and to various other places around town regularly, so he's pretty much active in his community every day. For interpersonal relationships, I also rated Arnie at a 4. He has a very broad group of friends and acquaintances, which can be seen at his birthday party. And also, he and Gilbert talk to a lot of people around town throughout the film, so it's clear that Arnie knows a lot of people, he talks to people, and he has a lot of friendships. He also has a very close relationship with Gilbert and the rest of his family. His relationship with Gilbert, they have a really, really strong bond. They spend endless hours together because Gilbert has to take care of him. But he also has a really close relationship with his mother and his sisters. So really it's a close-knit family, which is why I gave him a 4 rating. And so the final point that I wanted to discuss was basically the portrayal of Arnie's character with autism and how it affects viewers and society. So generally, I think this is a good portrayal of a case of autism in film, but no case is the same. So I think that if a viewer doesn't know a lot about autism, they would think that all autistic people are like Arnie. But I think this is a good portrayal of a character with autism if the viewer has a little bit of background knowledge. I think viewers can enjoy the story as long as they don't make assumptions about all people with autism, and that's why I included the link with 11 myths and misconceptions about autism, because I do think that that's important for viewers to know when they're considering this film.